Man vs. 50 with author Richard Maloof. Real advice and real stories on topics, regardless of age, and important to the modern man. Now, here's Richard.
All right.
Howdy.
Welcome back, man.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Good.
Good.
Glad to be here.
Did you,
Another week.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you.
Yeah.
Did you think any more about that, the last episode with our Take Tsubo?
Yeah.
Interesting.
The real heartbreak is a real thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is a real thing.
Like
So,
medically diagnosed.
yes.
Yeah.
So the things we talked about in the last episode, it was kind of around the heartbreak of relationships. I know from experience, you and I have experienced other heartbreaks in our life from death of a loved one.
Yep.
And I fortunately had I don't know if the pleasure is the right word, but fortunately was there when you were given the eulogy, if you will. We'll call it that. For your mom and when she passed away.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about that and some things in my life. And I wanted to touch on how you felt or what you felt, you know, that kind of heartbreak that you felt during that.
Okay.
Just getting up there and doing it.
Yeah. So it was an honor to get to speak at Mom's memorial service. I wanted to make sure that everybody left with the image of Mom that I wanted them to have. And that may sound selfish, but Mom had struggled with Alzheimer's for about 7 years. And so oftentimes when someone passes, it's the last times of your interactions that's what you remember. And so I spent a long time writing my talk, if you will, and I really wanted everybody to remember Mom, not who Mom became as a result of that terrible disease.
Right.
So, but the feeling inside for me started 7 years prior, where, and I know you've experienced the same, but with your grandmother, but the struggle that, I mean, it hurt. Oh, and the one moment that it hurt the most, and I think really was that heartbreak.
Right.
I would take Mom out to dinner once a week, and she liked chicken fingers, and that was easy for her to eat. She started losing a lot of mobility, or the ability to use her hands and everything. So chicken fingers was easy. And we were at Whataburger. I could tell you where we sat, I did everything about that day. And she said, "So if you could do anything, what would you do?" And I said, "Oh, well, I've always wanted to work on an island at a resort hotel, of course."
Yeah.
And this is just now, this would have been about 9 years ago, right? Yeah. So I'm in my mid 40s. And so I said, I'd love to go work on an island resort. And she goes, "Oh, you should talk to Chris." And I didn't know what to do. And I said, I am Chris. And she goes, "No, my Chris." And it's like somebody just stepped on me.
Right.
And I said, "I am your Chris." And she said, "Oh, well, I'm glad you're here." And that, I think, was the heartbreak I have for losing Mom.
Right.
Because she was physically still there, but that was it physically.
Right.
Mentally, my mom was gone.
Right.
And there were glimpses, man. I mean, every now and then we'd get a moment of Mom, and it was great. I loved it. But people talk about a piece of you is gone, and the people who say that truly are the only ones who've really experienced it, because it is true.
Right.
There's a piece of me that's voided. It's gone.
Right.
And there's times I think about Mom, and I'm laughing, and other times I'm crying.
Right.
And to get up and speak was really, I wanted for Mom to, I wanted everybody there to remember Mom the way they remembered her, the way they knew her before all of that.
Right.
And a lot of the stuff that I said hopefully was, it was meant to kind of be light and funny because that's what Mom liked to do.
Right.
But the heartbreak, I got to say, was a long time.
Right.
My heartbreak was spread out. I mean, that one moment, obviously, but then I had 7 years. Unknowingly, it was 7 years, right? I didn't know how long it was going to take, but it spread out over that time. So that initial shock, was way back here, and then I had a lot of time to almost start the grieving process.
Right. So you kind of had a runway a little bit to lead up to it. Yeah. Yeah. So what gave you the strength to stand up and talk that day?
She did.
Right.
It was, let me get choked up.
Yeah.
She did.
Yeah.
She always, Mom had a really tough upbringing. And if you were there, you remember some of the stuff that was said. Her mom died when she was 10.
Yeah.
And she told my dad when they got married, I want to be the best mom. That was her goal in life,
right,
was to be the best mom. And she did it. And she was always encouraging of us and always said, when you're faced with a challenge, confront it, run through it. And so this was a challenge for me. I'd always wondered, would I speak at my parents' funeral?
Right.
I don't know. So,
no, I understand. And what I had said to you earlier, that we have, something in common, a few things, and obviously a lot of stuff. But so when my grandfather passed away, so as many people know, my grandparents raised me.
Yep.
So when my grandfather passed away, it was the same. I mean, this guy, smartest guy I've ever met in my life. For Christmas, we'd get him, the Wall Street Journal crossword puzzles, and he would, I would look at one, like, what? Why? I don't know what this is. And he would just every day work through them. And he still had his mind, he still had everything. And, his was a little bit different, where my grandmother and him were celebrating, I think it was New Year's Eve, and he stood up and went to get another drink, and he collapsed, and he just could not walk again. I don't think anybody ever knew what was really wrong with him, because he was so tough that he just kind of, I don't know, I really don't know to this day. And so it's a crazy story. So he's in the nursing home, kind of, this is the end of it, right? And, I'm trying to be very strong for my grandmother. She was still alive. And we're in his bedroom with him, and he's kind of unconscious and just kind of, we think it's pretty much it. And then at one point we thought he stopped breathing and was done, and everyone's crying and everything. And then all of a sudden he wakes up. It was crazy. It's a crazy story. He wakes up and he's like, what's everyone kind of doing? It was like he was 100% healthy and fine. And people say right before they have this surge of life into them.
Yep.
And I remember we went and got some beers and some pizza, 'cause he loved, beer and everything. And, he had a sip of beer, so we didn't really give him any beer, but he was up and alert and everything. And it was the most amazing moments that we got to spend with him. And then everyone left, and my brother and I and my ex-wife was there. And my brother sat on one side, I sat on the other. And we each held his hand, and he, 4 a.m. in the morning or something like that, ended up passing away. Crazy. Off the heels of him waking up and being I still have one of the beer bottles, actually.
Good.
Good.
That's cool.
And then, so a couple things went through my mind. I mean, he was basically my father, and this was the heartache was overwhelming. And what kept going through my mind is, I'm never going to talk to him again.
Yeah.
Like, that was so weird. This is the first person close in my life that ever passed away. I didn't know how to deal with it at all. So I went into complete, like, armor. And I'm like, nope, I'm good. Like, let's go. What do we got to do? Yeah. What do we got to do?
Yeah.
And I remember when it came to the funeral. So 2 things about this. The visitation, I can't. Like, it's the only one I've ever done, and I never did another one again, and that's part 2 of this story. Mm-hmm. But to have my grandfather's body laying there while people are walking in, I could not wrap my head around it. I wanted to, like, crawl out of my skin and run away.
Run away, yeah.
I hated it.
Yeah.
We did it, whatever. I understand people are coming to pay their respects. I hated it. And I got up and talked at the funeral, and I think for me, my grandmother still being alive and my brother, he probably doesn't realize this, but he was very close with my grandfather. He had my grandfather, my brother, and my grandmother and me, we just had these different relationships. Mm-hmm. And my brother's very stoic and kind of, he's like a closet emotional guy. Like, he won't show, he's got his game face on all the time.
Okay.
My sister, if you like, the sky's blue, she'll start crying. That's just the way she is. And then I fall somewhere right in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And so he wasn't going to get up and talk. And so I kind of felt like I needed to be strong, and it just gave me this strength. Like, I was like, got my grandmother here. I can't dwell in the past. I got to be here in the present for her. And my brother, he can't do this, so I'm going to get up and do it. And it gave me the strength. And it was all, all the things I remembered about him. All of us knew about him. Inside jokes, that stuff, right? Yeah. And at that point, I really didn't care if anyone got it, really, because my family was laughing or crying because they understood what we were talking about, this man, right? And like, the heartbreak for me on that part was, it was subtle. Because my grandmother's heartbreak, like, I couldn't deal with it. So we got home, and my grandmother, so there's a lot of heartbreaks in different ways going on here, like almost like this ripple. So my heartbreak is I just lost my grandfather. Mm-hmm. So a death. My grandmother's heartbreak, this is 63 years of her life married to this man, is gone. She's starting to have some symptoms of not remembering a lot of things. So her ability to comprehend was on and off also. Yeah. And right after the funeral, she woke up and she could not lift her head. Literally could not lift up her head. She would have to sit there and hold her neck up because for some reason, the muscles in her neck from the effects of her heartbreak were causing her body to have this reaction.
Wow.
To the point I bought her a neck brace just to hold her
to help
neck
hold
up.
it.
And eventually, as things subsided, she came out of it. But still...
But you had heartbreak for her.
Yes.
And her heartbreak.
Yes. So she was very stoic about this also. She was just not going to but she came out of it. And then years later, when she passed away, like, I don't think I've ever told you this story, but when she passed away, so the things that went through my mind are, I'm not going to sit there and let all these strangers walk in and look at my grandmother, dead body in a casket. I'm just not going to do it. The last memories I've had of her were us sitting at Starbucks and her convincing me she wasn't hungry, and then proceeded to eat a big piece of coffee cake and drink all this coffee. And we would sit there for hours. And she would just sit there, and sometimes we'd talk, sometimes we wouldn't. And she would just like sometimes put her head back and let the sun and the wind blow through her. And it was just those moments, right? Yep. And also when I'd go visit her at the nursing home and just seeing her and her face, and, you know, she was a very happy older person where, you know, you've been in those nursing homes and some aren't. So she was very happy, very friendly and everything. And I wanted that to be the last memory. Plus, I know there was a lot of varying opinion in my family of me not going to the visitation, and I didn't go to the funeral.
Really?
I couldn't. To this day, I've never been to her gravesite. I've never tried very hard not to shed a tear because I don't want to believe she's actually gone. And I think my family, like, I get it, like why they might have been upset I didn't go, but they have no idea what I was going through, the heartbreak I experienced. Yeah. You brought a great point, and I said this. It's like somebody cut my arm off, and I'll never get it back. And even though my family was there, I felt so alone. Like, this person was everything to me. Yeah. Like, she was why I am who I am. She was like the breath in my lungs, you know? And she was gone, and I felt like I had nobody. And they looked at it, I think, this is the tradition, this is what you're supposed to do. This, but that's not me.
Okay.
And I couldn't see her dead.
That way, yeah.
I couldn't see her or imagine her gone. And now that maybe we've gotten older and maybe after they listen, they'll understand because we've never talked about it. Yeah. But I literally have never been the same. And you spoke the same thing. You understand. And, you know, in what we talked about in our last episode with the actual physical swelling, there's another part of this too that is just void. And that's a great word and a great adjective that you said, just void. Like literally, there is a piece of me that is void. I never get it back.
Well, I always say there's a piece of your heart that's gone, that's missing.
It's true.
There has to be, like you talked about the medical part of it.
Yes.
I think medically, when you have that trauma of, in your case with your grandmother, mom with mom, there's something different about our heart.
Right.
I 100% agree. It doesn't ever go away.
No, and it decades later, I'm still not over it.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't think they were so impactful in my life. I never think I'll ever get over the fact that they're not here.
Yeah.
So we talked about this relationship heartbreak and the trauma of a death. And it's just, these are just different. And I think, you know, I don't know if maybe it's the stress of that loss, but what is, to your point, great segue, but is there a medical condition for just a void in that? We know now there's one that certain things like that kind of, but with a relationship heartbreak, eventually time cures everything. Yeah. With this heartbreak, I might not be waking up crying every day, but there's not a day that goes by I don't think of them.
Amen.
And like that girl in Arizona, unless maybe she pops up on Facebook, I don't even like, in that girl that you probably don't even barely remember their name, right? But so there's different levels to this.
Yeah.
And I mean, we'll touch on some more things in other episodes, but it's kind of like mistake regret versus opportunity regret. This is relationship heartbreak versus death of a loved one heartbreak. And it's just like, you know, one thing I've learned, like, as we've started doing this, and, you know, and I appreciate that we I'm not trying to fit into a box with anything we do. I love that we can have fun with, our car stuff and not to do, and then really talk about life experiences that we have. Because this is part of being 50, these journeys. Yeah. It's good and bad on both sides.
When we were 20, we didn't do this. We didn't know this.
Right. And, it's regret. So could somebody say my heartbreak was mistake regret? Okay. I'm starting to realize all of this stuff has a different name. Grief, heartbreak, mistake, regret, but it's all connected somehow in different levels. And like I said, we'll talk about that in other shows, but all of them, and I want to deep dive into kind of all of them have their own definition, but all carry something together, right? And just like we discovered with heartbreak, there's different kinds. And it is just, and a lot of it is so important to surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah, right.
Because if I had the right person in Scottsdale, they probably could have talked me off the ledge.
Sure.
Got me refocused, told me, stop drinking 2 bottles of wine, get back to playing basketball and going to the gym. What are you doing?
Right.
And they would have distracted me to keep doing stuff, right? And, just like this other heartbreak, we are getting on with our life and things, but every day something I do or something I say, it's that thing you're becoming your parent.
Yeah.
They've had so much influence on us that, that's our way of honoring them subconsciously. Right. We're not even realizing that things we're there are things my grandfather did and drove me crazy, and now I do them. So it's what? I think so, but those things make me smile and help me get through that day of thinking about them and appreciating them in a different way than, and like you said, that my grandmother, I would walk into her room and she would grab my hand and ask me how long we'd been married for. Yeah. It's okay. I just got to the point where I was thinking, was she just felt a certain love for me. Right. And she was just he must be my husband, or he's, some people would get up. I just came to live with it. Right.
Yeah.
And understand it more. Yeah. But for me, with that heartbreak, never seeing her dead body, I still think she's in Peoria, and I get to go see her and go to Starbucks with her. You know what I mean? So
those are the memories.
Memories that help me get through the reality of, and I'm sure there's some psychologists out there that's he's just compartmentalizing all of these feelings and thoughts, and maybe you're right. Yeah, who cares?
That's how you deal with it.
That's how I deal with it.
Right?
But
and you're okay with it.
Yes. So, but I really appreciate you sharing about your mom. Yeah. I remember when that started and what you and your dad were kind of going through.
Yeah. Yeah.
What you and your dad were going through, and I definitely understood because I definitely have been through something similar. So I get it, and I know what continues to push you, and what pushed you was your dad too, being there, and you had to be strong for him.
Well, Dad didn't want to. Yeah, he couldn't. He said, "I can't.
Right.
I can't talk." And I said, "I got it."
Right.
So the question was, what pushed me to do it? There were a lot of things. Mom was, of course, my first, right? But I have a sister. She wasn't. Now her husband spoke. Yeah. My brother-in-law. Yeah. He did a great job. And I'll tell you what's funny is my dad was going through the order of the service, and he said, "Okay, I'm gonna do this, and then you'll talk, and then." Your brother-in-law will talk. And I said, no.
Yeah.
No, I'm last.
Right.
And he was like, oh. I said, no, I'm last.
Right. Right. No.
And I thought, what? Hold on a minute. No, I want everybody walking out thinking about Mom the way I'm about to remind them. Right. I'm not telling them anything new. I'm reminding them. Or, like in your case, you didn't know my mom prior to Alzheimer's.
Right.
So hopefully I was able to paint a picture for people that were in our lives
Right.
or in my life that didn't really get the experience of mom, you know.
Well, you did I
before.
think you did a great job of like the chronological evolution of her, you know, to where she got to a point and the people she helped and the things she did. So I think it was great. It couldn't have been easy, but again, you know, during those times, what we did to get through the growing void that was coming, you know, we knew
it was inevitable,
but but it's like your adrenaline got you through that point.
Yep.
And then when the dust settles, you're like,
well, I'll tell you, I was really missing mom. Have you heard the story about the red bird? Like if you see a red bird, that's someone, you know, coming from heaven, you know, coming to visit you. It was a few months after mom passed away, and I was having a really hard time. I mean, to your point, and it's the same thing. I felt I had the realization I can't just pick up the phone and call mom, or stop by the house and just see mom, talk to mom. There's so many times since she's passed, I would love to have been able to call mom and go, I don't know what to do.
Right.
Help me with this. And it was gone. And I remember going, man, mom, I miss you. I wish so bad that I could see you. We were getting ready for church. I went outside, start the car. Lori was inside still getting dressed. So I went outside and I just sat there going, man, Lord, I miss mom. I don't know how to get over this right now. And I kid you not, a red bird flew and landed in the tree branch across the street.
Yeah.
Facing me. I lost it.
Yeah.
I was in the car by
like
myself.
Right.
I wept and I felt better.
Yeah.
I know it sounds weird, right?
No,
but
no.
Sometimes a good cry
totally get it.
makes you feel good.
I totally get it. I mean, it is. There are times. So I used to call my grandmother every day on the way home from work.
Yep.
Every day. And there are times I find myself like I'll go to pick up the phone and I just have this moment of like, can I call her? Am I supposed to call? And then I all of a sudden come back to reality that no.
Well,
and
I haven't deleted mom's phone number.
Oh, it's like, well, I mean, it's programmed, right? I mean, it's and the house I grew up in is,
Yeah.
you know, so that number, my mom ended up buying my grandparents' house. She
Yeah.
lives there and the phone number's the same.
Same number.
Crazy, right?
That's cool.
But yeah, it's just weird when you have those moments. You're just like, and they're there. And that actually is an episode too that I want to talk about is, you know, is God real or when does God speak to us, and talk about that. You know, we don't get too much into that, but there are times like are so relative to what we're talking about even now that I've experienced God's hand, and I think it'd be a cool topic to kind of go through our experiences, just like the red bird and things like that. So, all right, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, same.
Good episode.
That was good.
So I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks for watching Man vs. 50 with author Richard Malouf. Don't forget to subscribe.